Hey Moonies, welcome to the Sailor Moon Fan Club podcast. I'm your host, Victoria L. Johnson. I'm here with Ayumi Shinozaki, aka Magical Girl Ayu. She's a writer, translator, artist, and host of Sparkleside Chats, a podcast about magical girls featuring the voices of people who love them. I'll also be on the show later this year, so definitely check that podcast out. And I'm super excited to have her on the podcast. Hey Ayu.
Hey. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here as well.
Yeah. Welcome to the Sailor Moon Fan Club.
Yes.
So the first question I like to ask everyone is, what's your first memory of watching Sailor Moon?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of a difficult question for me to answer because I was 2 years old when Sailor Moon first debuted in Japan, and from what I know from my parents, I was already watching it at that time, but I have no memories of when I was 2. So basically, for literally as long as I can remember, I've been watching the show. So I don't have any I really don't have any distinct memories after that. I don't even know because I moved to the US when I was 4, and I have no idea how I ended up watching it at that time, but I know that as soon as it was available to watch in English, I also watched it then, and yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did not. That's super cool. I think that makes a lot of sense. You're way too young. When's the first time you I guess realize you were a fan? Maybe where it's I'm actively seeking this out and watching it.
Oh gosh, I don't even know. It was just kind of a constant thing. It was very important to my early childhood development. So
Love that.
It was just a constant, it was everywhere. So I didn't even think about it. My my parents, especially my mother, were very insistent on buying as much Sailor Moon stuff as they could from Japan. Also Pokemon, because that was also really popular at the time in the US, as it was becoming popular in Japan. But so even though I lived in the US, most of my Sailor Moon merch was still Japanese. I guess it was mostly because they wanted to make sure I could still use Japanese.
Yeah, I can see that. It's let me give you a piece of something you're interested in to kind of keep you as a part of the culture, I guess. So you're not, I don't know.
Yeah, my earliest my I don't know if it's my first toy, but the toy that I remember getting earliest is a Sailor Moon. It looks almost like an electronic briefcase. It's very small, but it had it was a whole robotic thing that had her voice in it, and it when you opened it up, it showed all of the the simple Japanese kana, hiragana. And you could press the buttons to have her say things. So if you pressed ah, she would say ah, and then you could do a playback. And so that's how I practiced Japanese, and I was probably 5 or 6.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I am so jealous that you had Japanese toys. It was there was a lot in the US, but I imagine it probably wasn't nearly as much, and definitely some exclusives as well. That's super cool. Do you have any favorite episodes or moments in the show?
That's also a difficult question. I mean,
yeah,
I guess I'm still kind of in the middle of revisiting it now. I sometimes have episodes about Sailor Moon on Sparkleside Chat, so then I'm rewatching episodes. And I've also never read the comics, so I can't speak to those. But I think that there's so much about Sailor Moon in general that was always so important for me as a kid. The main thing being that it was about a group of friends, and that was something I didn't have at my school. And then the other major thing about Sailor Moon was that Sailor Moon was a story about a girl who was reborn, she has an earth form, but she actually also is Princess Serenity, and has a different mother because of that. And that was very I guess it didn't really occur to me until recently. Like, that was actually very important for me because I didn't want to be connected to my own mother in the same way. I wanted a different mom, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. I could definitely see how, like, if you have like a relationship with your mom, or if you have, a mom that you don't really particularly like, how that could resonate for sure. And Buddha, your former classmates, like.
Yeah, I was severely bullied in elementary school. Like, I'm fine now, right? I'm 30 years old. I have gone to therapy, but I had a lot of bullying, especially in particular, I was bullied for being Japanese because there weren't any other Japanese girls at my school. There were only like 2 or 3 other Japanese boys, and one of them was my brother, so it didn't really count.
Yeah. And
he was very Americanized because he was 2 years old when we moved here. But yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, yeah, at the time it was really rough, and then I didn't have the support I needed at home as much as I needed. I didn't have it. It's very, I have a complicated relationship with my mom also, but yeah, just seeing, this Japanese story about a group of girls was very, very important to me for that reason. It was like everything that I wish I had. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I say boo to your classmates. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I also love about Sailor Moon is that friendship aspect and like that found family. I think it's just so important, and I wish more shows had it because it's just it's so hard. It makes me so happy to watch, and it's something good to have. Do you have a favorite Sailor Scout or Senshi?
So it kind of always has depended, but like as a kid, definitely Sailor Mercury was my favorite. Like she was interested in science and computers, and I wanted to be just like that. And I loved her little computer. Also, when when Americans couldn't pronounce my name, they would call me Amy. Like, usually not even asking if it was okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, that sounds like Americans.
Yeah. So they would be like, oh, yeah, your name is too difficult. I'm just going to call you Amy. But because Amy was also Sailor Mercury's name in English, it made it more okay, which is maybe not great in hindsight, but...
We all need our coping mechanisms. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That would make it a little bit better, but not better for you to deal with, not better for them to do it. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Who is you say is your favorite now? You said it switches?
Yeah, like, I guess because it depends on the iteration. So, like, after watching the live-action series, I became very interested in Sailor Jupiter in particular because her, she's shown to have a lot of, like, quote-unquote girly hobbies, and one of those would be knitting, right? Because there's, like, a whole episode with her knitting a scarf and then giving it to Motoki, and suddenly there was like this new ship that I was obsessed with. But that's also one of my hobbies, and so since I was getting into that about the same time that I was watching that series, I kind of really connected more to Jupiter at that time and her balance of masculine and feminine ideas, I guess. Yeah, and then these days, kind of similar to my own podcast, I guess I love that there are so many, unique aspects to every girl. So I have a kind of love for all of them at this point, I think.
Yeah, that's been me more nowadays. I mean, Usagi's my favorite because he's the one I identify with the most, along with, like, I love Sailor Jupiter as well. I love Sailor Pluto and Neptune. But it definitely, like, the more I rewatch it and the more I revisit the series, I really just see so much value in each of the characters. Like you said, like, they each are so distinct and just have so many good qualities about them where it's like, oh, I actually like really like this aspect of this character and this aspect of this character. And they're such a good ensemble group.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you, since you live in Japan, have you been to Azabu Juban?
Yeah, not really, because I don't live in Tokyo, so
Got it.
I don't especially now. I haven't been to Tokyo in like 2 years, but yeah, going to Tokyo is very, very rare for me because I live about 2 hours from it. But it's kind of pricey even just to go there, so I have to like have a really good reason. So I most of the time I don't go in there. But yeah, I haven't been though. There was I think the first year that I moved back, there was a Sailor Moon exhibit in Roppongi Hills, and I was able to go to that, and that was really cool. But yeah, I haven't just generally done a lot of Sailor Moon stuff more recently, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, that exhibit sounds really cool, and yeah, that makes sense. If it's 2 hours, that's a commitment. So I totally get that. Yeah, yeah, it was really cool though. I did end up going when I went to Japan, and it's really fun to like be able to visit places you've seen in a show.
Oh
And it's
yeah,
like, oh man, this
absolutely.
is where like so and so was. Even if it like even especially for like an animated show, I feel like that is just I don't know, something I don't know. You don't always get it, especially with American animation. Like they don't base everything on like actual places. So it's really cool to be like, oh, this is like
Right.
where Sailor Moon was. And like this is where she met up with Sailor Mercury. And it's like, oh my god, this is the statue that you see in the show. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah,
Well, yeah.
absolutely.
Well, highly
Yeah.
recommend it if you ever get a chance. But yeah, it seems like you got it. You got it down anyway. So we kind of touched on this, like, with your show, you don't talk just about Sailor Moon, you talk about all magical girls shows. What made you want to start Sparkleside Chats?
Well, I guess the main thing was that, I've always been really interested in podcasting. Like, I remember, I think I found like early like things I wrote in like 2012 about how I was going to start a podcast next year. Of course, that didn't happen until the pandemic made it easier, I guess. But
Yeah.
I guess the main reason was just that like, there are podcasts like this one that are focused on one particular show, but there are so many magical girls out there, and I love all of them. So I just wanted to be able to celebrate that. And again, like, because as a kid, I was consuming not just Sailor Moon, but like most of my media was a very solitary thing. Like, I used to read tons of books, and that's extremely solitary. But like, even just watching shows and stuff, I didn't really start to like do that with people until maybe 8th grade. So I just really was wanting to connect to Sailor Moon fans or fans of any other shows I like or books I liked. And like, I didn't even know the word Moonies until I was in my 20s. I had never heard it before. And I think by that time, it was definitely a very established like fandom word in English. But like, it was something where I just kind of was caught by surprise because there is not, I don't know, it's just very hard to like connect to other people, even online. Like, just also, like, just because someone likes the same thing you do doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna always like have, I guess, be on the same page about everything else. So I have in the past done other stuff with magical girl fandom that went very, very
Ooh.
bad, to the point like I needed therapy about it. So um so like I unfortunately saw like the dark side of fandom really quickly, and I wanted to make a space where I could celebrate how great magical girls are. And like, of course there are, bad things. Even Sailor Moon has problematic aspects. We do talk about them, when they come up. But for the most part, it's like, well, if you don't like this other show, we're just not going to talk about it with you. We'll talk with someone else who loves that show. And, just try to find my goal has been to like, even for a show I've never seen before, I want to find someone who has been like watching it, or like they somehow accidentally found like a VHS in the corner of a store somewhere, or something like that. Like, I love those stories, and I love hearing about like, especially also talking to creators, which is another thing we do every 4 weeks, is like hearing the just the weird, wild ways people get into a magical girl series. And, obviously Sailor Moon is a big one for a lot of people, because that was kind of the boom, especially in the US, because like other countries were already importing magical girls long before then, but yeah, everything was kind of like blowing up in the 90s. And yeah, it just like was always so fascinating to hear these stories, and I genuinely wanted to hear all these stories from others, and I wanted to also kind of just find an excuse to watch all these shows that I hadn't watched yet, you know.
Yeah, I think that is so true. It's the same for me with like starting this podcast, like wanting that space. And you're right, like fandoms can get very like judgy and like gatekeepy and just weird. And it's like, why can't we all just like love this thing and have fun? Like, why are you being so mean? But shout out to therapy. Therapy's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I really love the concept, and I think it's really cool, and I'm excited to join the podcast and record our episode on Magical Girl Spec-Ops, Asuka. Okay.
Yeah. It's very interesting so far, so it's gonna definitely be a very unique conversation.
Yeah, I've been really loving just like all these different like subgenres or different interpretations people are like bringing from the magical girl genre. Like, you know, yeah, like Madoka, of course, and with like Magical Girl Spec-Ops, like such a cool concept to like bring magic girls will like add this like military aspect to it. So it's just I've been really interested in like different subgenres of magical girls lately. And that's been really fun.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that. I've noticed, I mean, I think that Madoka in particular, for some reason, really hit a lot of people who hadn't been watching magical girls for a while. And I think that the same thing, I think it's, well, even more recently, like when it comes to things that are, you know, trying to talk about the genre or like, what's the word? I guess even like parody the genre, like Magical Girl Friendship Squad. They generally tend to focus on Sailor Moon because that's what most people know. But like Sailor Moon is 30 years old and Magical Girls kept going on after, you know? Like there have just been so many like, well, I don't want to say improvements, but like it's evolved, you know? So like, you know, for example, in the 2000s, that was really the boom of like magical girls that are not for girls. And, you know, like we had Lyrical Nanoha, which is still one of the most buck wild series in terms of like origin because it was a spin-off of a porn game and now it is like this super huge like has a very big like queer fandom as well in it. And it's just like still going. There's still spin-offs and it is just this interesting epic meta series.
That's phenomenal.
And that one also has a similar reaction. Like Lyrical Nanoha also led to Madoka, but like Nanoha is also in one where people are like, oh, it's not your kids' magical girls. It's different. They're cool and they go through real stuff and it's like real or whatever. But it's like, I mean, all the stuff for kids is also, it gets dark too. So I don't know. Like, I guess it's very interesting because one thing that comes up a lot is like, especially for kids shows, but even for the other ones, like there's a difference between the vibe of the show and like the literal narrative of the show. And, you know, what that vibe is can seem very different depending on how it's presented to you. So like, for example, in the US, Cardcaptor Sakura was rebranded as Cardcaptors to be more like it's for kids, not just for girls. And because of that branding, I wasn't interested.
Oh, wow. I could see that, though.
I was like, oh, it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, this is about kid stuff. Like, this is like, you know, like Pokemon or whatever. Like, there's clearly a boy very present in the opening in this, you know, like the song was pretty cool in English, but like, I had no interest in watching this show because it was like a mixed show. I wanted to see a show about just girls. And it's like, oh, it turns out it was a show about just a girl, but like they didn't brand it that way. So I didn't care anymore.
You're making me wonder if that's the reason why I didn't get into it much when I was younger. I ended up watching it later. And I'm wondering if that was why. 'Cause something, it just didn't grab me. And like looking back, I'm like, why was that? Because like I love Sailor Moon at the time. And it's like, this show should have been a easy, like, another show for me to watch. But I'm wondering if that was it. Like, because I didn't really get into Pokemon either at the time. And I'm wondering if it was just like, this doesn't really seem for me. This isn't like what I like right now. I don't know. I gotta think about that. You make a good point.
Yeah, branding is really everything. Like even like just the opening theme song, the way that they changed it like that, it was enough to have that change in the expectation of the series, I guess. So yeah.
And Lyrical Nanoha has been on my list for a while. I did not know it came from a porn game though, and I'm just like, that's hilarious. And now I kind of want to watch it.
Yeah, it's really wild because the main guy behind it, Shimbo, he made even before that game series, before he joined that game series, he made like some of the wildest, like, oh my god, this porn should not exist kind of porn, like please go to jail kind of porn, and then ended up making this like cute magical girl series. I mean, there are definitely like, it's something where you have to keep that origin in mind when you're watching the series, because like honestly there are kind of panty shots of this kid and it's like she's really a kid. Is like, you could almost excuse it if it's a teenager, but even then not really. But like the fact that it's like an elementary school student whose panties I'm seeing, it's like, please, this is really bad. But you know, it like gets better. And and then it's like, well, that guy also went on to help create Madoka, and it's like Madoka is a completely different series and there are no panty shots in that series. So it's like, what happened?
It's hard sometimes watching these shows, because it's like, oh, like I enjoy the show, but like, oh my god, why are you doing this? Like, this is so cringy and like horrible. It's a balancing act. But you're so right too, like going back to that branding. Like I think even with a show like Sailor Moon, I feel that people they see it as like, oh, it's just super girly and it's like, you know, pink and like all these things, which it is, and I love it. But it's also like there's some darkness in Sailor Moon. Like there's some really dark scenes and like storylines, and that I think people don't always recognize just because it's like so much more like the aesthetic is pretty. But yeah, I love it. So actually, leads me to my next question though. What are some of your favorite magical girl series?
That's really hard. Like I mean, I really truly do love like every girl series I've watched, at least a little bit. But like in terms of things that were important to me in my childhood and like have like I guess a strong impact on me even now, I would say that a lot of the ones for kids in the 2000s were really big. So Tokyo Mew Mew was big for me, as well as Mermaid Melody, Pichi Pichi Pitch, because I am obsessed with mermaids. And also singing, even though I still am not a good singer.
That's all right.
And then I guess another one, another big one for me, I would say is, I guess, well, Sugar Sugar Rune as well. Moyoko Anno, the artist for that comic, is one of my favorite comic artists. And then I also really love Precure, which started in 2004 and is still going today. It is currently like the series for kids when it comes to magical girls. I
really need to watch Precure. I remember when I went to Japan, it was like everywhere. I was like, what is this show? I didn't know it was this popular. And I need to watch it, because it's been getting even more popular, I think, this year. I've been seeing it a lot more. I think maybe they had some new stuff come out, probably, or something. That would happen.
I think the main reason why you might see the popularity increase is the fact that this year was the first season that was simulcast in English from the beginning.
Oh.
Because they started doing it last year, like during the middle of the pandemic and the hiatus. Like mid-season, they're like, oh, we're gonna start simulcasting Healing Good Precure, which is what was airing last year. But they didn't bother to like put the original, I think it was like 10 or 11 episodes, until later on in the year. So it was like the only people that were watching the simulcast were people that had been illegally watching it at the beginning of the year, before it got put into this like legal platform. And so this season, like, everyone could legally start from the beginning. So I think that was the main reason why. It's also a very good season this year, so I do recommend it. But this generally, Precure is such a fascinating magical girl series because it has origins in Sentai and Dragon Ball, which is a very different origin from most other. I mean, obviously, like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball were happening at the same time, but the director of Dragon Ball directed the first season of Precure, Futari Precure, which you can watch on Crunchyroll. And the theme of that first season was Girls Want a Rampage Too, and it's like, yes, and it's so the fighting is a lot heavier, like. And the transformation sequences at the beginning were pretty similar to most other series. They're pretty passive, but by like, I want to say, by the 5th season, they really start to amp up. And now the transformation sequences for Precure are just like beyond. And like, I just, even if you just watch the transformations, like they're always like, wow, this is so cool. And it's, they're really stunning.
That just blew my mind. I did not realize that one of the directors of Dragon Ball like directed Precure, like Magic Girl series. Like I need to see how that looks because that sounds epic. And I love like Girls Want to Rampage too because it's true. I want to rampage all the time. It's wreck stuff.
The original one it's very solid still. You can watch it. There is an English dub. I don't know how accessible that is, but the subtitled version you can watch on Crunchyroll right now.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Any particular season I should start at? Should I just start from the beginning?
Honestly, I would say the best thing is watch the openings. Like there are so many like YouTube videos that are compilations of all the openings. Watch the openings, see which seasons speak to you, and watch those. So currently on Crunchyroll, they only have a handful of seasons. Like this is a series that's 18 seasons long at this point, and they only have like 5 seasons right now. So you can watch the original Futari Precure. Then you can watch Kira Kira Precure a la mode, which if you're a Moonie, you'll really appreciate because there are 2 girls in that season that are literally inspired by Haruka and Michiru. And then and also the comics have not been translated yet, but in the comics they're like even more canonically like they get married when they're older. And then they also have, after that they have Healing Go Precure, which was last year's season, and then Tropical Rouge Precure this season. So like it's not much, but I do I really want more people to be able to get Precure, so like I try to push those seasons. Like those are all very good seasons. Healing Go Precure is a little bit shorter because of the pandemic, and I do think that for some people like the themes were kind of lost because of that, I guess, but like I still think that in general it was a strong season. But yeah, I think that like I want people to watch it legally, right? Like I want it to be accessible legally. So yeah, I think that definitely if you like the first season, the look and everything of course has evolved a lot as like different people are on the staff and stuff. If you are looking to watch stuff off of Crunchyroll, then I would say the stronger seasons that people love to talk about are Fresh Precure, Heartcatch Precure, and Go Princess Precure.
Okay, all right, man. I have a lot.
Yeah,
see, I'm looking at it now, and I actually realized that Hug Precure was directed in part by Sailor Moon director Junichi Sato. So I'm like, wow.
He is. Sato is like just a magical girl god, right? Because he did Sailor Moon, he did DoReMi at the beginning, he did Magic Users Club, lots of stuff. He is directing Wata Premagi, which just started airing. So like it's just he's a great force, and he's amazing because he's a male director, but his like basic thing is he talks to women
Go figure.
Gets their thoughts, and he amazing. Like he's so good at doing these series for girls because he talks to women, he collaborates with women, And I just think it's like, he's amazing. I love him so much.
The bar is so low, but that is great. It's like...
yeah. But yeah, Hug Precure is also, it's a good season. I would say harder to watch if you don't like babies, because there's a prominent baby.
Got it.
In that
Okay,
one.
well, if the baby's cute, I'll like it, but if they're not, maybe not. But all right, yeah, it's also directed Princess Tutu, which you might have mentioned, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, I think definitely I'm gonna skip around on this and probably catch up. You know, it's funny, I'm looking at it. There's like over 800 episodes, and I'm like, we don't talk about it enough. Like people talk about like One Piece, but like you don't hear about like Precure.
Yeah, I think part of it is like unlike One Piece. Like One Piece is this huge narrative following the same characters. As far as I know, I don't watch One Piece, but you know, Precure is a whole series of spin-offs. So you can start from episode 1 of any season, except for season 2 and season 5. Those are the only ones that are sequel seasons. Otherwise, just jump in wherever and you're good. Like that's why I said, you know, watch the openings. Any opening that speaks to you, like, oh, this, I like the themes, I like what's going on, I like the style, whatever. That's the one you should watch. Like,
thank you. Sure. I'm gonna try that and see what happens. I'm excited. Definitely need to watch it. What would you say is your favorite piece of nerd merch that you own?
I know you were gonna ask me this question, and then like
got caught up in the Magical Girls.
So I'm a big fan of like functional merch for the most part. Like I love merch that I buy that I can use, like a good notebook or folder or something. But I would say, I think more recently my obsession has been collecting books, like Magical Girl books. So I have, well, there are only 3 Sailor Moon novels, but I have all 3 of them. And then I have all the Precure novels. I accidentally bought one of them twice, which is cool, whatever, it's fine. And I've been, like, some of the older ones are harder to get. And, like, for example, Magic Users Club, which I just mentioned before, there are 4 novels, and it's been, like, impossible to get my hands on the last one. But the... like, it's, like, really interesting to see that particular section of Magical Girls, because Magical Girl novels are usually only translated if they're the darker kind, like Raising Project or Madoka, or, even, like, I mean, Oge's the Wandering Witch is kind of a Magical Girls. It's, like, that's a fantasy more than anything, but, like, that is also, you know, for an older audience. So those get translated, but the ones like Precure, where, like, the reading level is, like, junior high school, those never get translated. And so that's something that I am personally trying to work on. That's, like, one of my dreams, I guess.
To translate it or to get that book?
Well, both, I guess. I mean, like, for Precure, for example, I already have all the books, so it's just a matter of, like, you know, talking to people, getting the idea out there. Like, hey, like, Kodansha, you're sitting on this gold mine. Like, again, Precure is this huge series. Absolutely none of the comics have been translated. None of the books have been translated. And there are tons of both. So it just, like, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the logic is there, but it is. Yeah, no,
Kodansha is sitting on so many gold mines, and they definitely should. Because, yeah, like you said, it's huge, especially after last year, like, translating them. And I think we'll even bring a bigger audience. Like, I would be interested in reading it as well, because I know I just get through series so much quicker when I read sometimes, and I would enjoy that.
Yeah, so, you know, Precure is a series where it's, like, animation focused first. So the comic is, you know, printed concurrently in Nakayoshi magazine.
Got it.
And the artists, the Kamikita twins, who are so awesome, they, you know, work with them to, like, have a generally same vibe going in their comics, but it's not going to be, like, a 1-for-1, because there are 12 months in a year, and that's how long the series is also, which is, like, almost sometimes up to 50 episodes, right? But, yeah, and then there's, like, a little bit more after that. The Kamikita twins are also doing the Naomi Osaka Magical Girl comic, which is so amazing.
I want to read it so bad.
It's so good. Like, that's one where, like, I'm, like, knocking down Kodansha's door. Like, let me translate this one. It's
Oh
so
my
good.
gosh.
Everyone needs
I
to
want to
read
read it
it.
so bad, but I can't find, obviously, a translated
Yeah.
version. And Naomi's also a Sailor Moon fan, so it makes me really happy.
Yeah.
And her
Like,
sister as well, Mari.
Yeah, so yeah, Mari Osaka is doing the story supervision for the comic.
Right.
So it's very much like you can see the elements that are based on their real life, but it's also like a giant space tennis opera. Like, it's totally wild. It's very it's honestly very Avatar: The Last Airbender in a lot of ways.
That is like blowing my mind. I did not expect that. I thought it was like a slice of life tennis series, like a sports drama.
It is magical space tennis is the whole thing. It's wild, you know, there are aliens, there's magic, elemental tennis, and at the same time there's also all these like cute things about just seeing the family together. They, like, even though it's set in space and so they're not from Earth, they still manage to write the characters in a way that, like, make Naomi still very unapologetically Japanese, in a way that, like, makes me so happy as a fellow half Japanese person, because Naomi is a lot more famous than I am, so she gets a lot of flack from both Japanese and non-Japanese people about her identity in a way that's so frustrating. And it's just like, to see this kind of writing, to see, you know, people coming together to make this amazing story, makes me so happy. I mean, when it debuted last year, it was this year.
It's been a long year.
Yes. And when it debuted, like, having her on the cover, I was just thinking about, like, all the half Japanese kids in Japan reading Nakiyoshi who could see that. Like, it just made me super happy. Like, I already know about kids who are really obsessed with the comic already, like other, like, younger half Japanese kids, and it just makes me so happy that's a thing that exists now.
That's so true. You know, I actually didn't think about, you know, the kids that are in Japan seeing this. Like, that is awesome, because I know they go through a hard time too, being Black and Japanese. And so, man, that's awesome. I didn't think about it from that representation stand, and that makes me really happy. Even happier, because I was just like, oh, like, Naomi's getting a manga, and, like, you know, the fact that, you know, she gets to represent, you know, both sides of herself. And I'm Haitian, so I'm always like, yay, she's Haitian.
Yeah.
And but she really does, like, represent both sides, and it's really sad that she gets slack, you know, from all different people. It's like, you're not this enough or that enough, and it's like, just let her be. She is who she is. Like,
yeah. Gosh, the think pieces that came out after the Olympics made me want to pull out my hair. But like, you know, I'm not Black, so I can't speak personally to the Black and Japanese experience. My father's white, but, you know, being mixed in Japan is a very complicated thing. And, you know, there are definitely a lot of levels to it, like, depending on how you look and so on. But, like, it's funny because I know people who don't know that Naomi Osaka is Black.
Really?
Yeah. Like, they'll think of her as being, I guess, quote unquote, just Japanese.
Okay.
Because her skin tone is like, there are Japanese people with two Japanese parents who have that you know, like, skin tone.
That's true, right.
So I think that's the main reason why. But obviously in more recent years, like, it's been discussed more, so, like, people generally do know about that, again, also because of all the racists. But it's like, it's really nice to see that, again, that representation, just not just for Black and Japanese kids, but other half Japanese kids as well, because, you know, there are a few people, you know, in the media, but for a long time it was just focused on, like in fiction, especially, the people writing half Japanese characters has been a mess and a half for generations.
Yeah, the Black representation I could speak to in Japanese animation has not always been great. So I'm happy to see better ones so far lately. And now that, you know, seeing Naomi creating a character and Mari creating a character is really cool. But yeah, I'm like, I'm so happy. This whole time I thought it was like a sports series. Like, Haikyuu or something. And now I'm like, oh my god, it's in space. There's magic. We got elements. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, what is going on?
Naomi Osaka is a magical girl. It's official.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, I really, 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 really need to read that. I really need them to translate it, or I need to learn.
I mean, again, I am available. I am willing. I would love to translate it. You know,
throwing that out there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like if I know there are like I know some prominent Black and Japanese translators that probably would be better off doing it, maybe. But like, yeah, just generally it needs to get out there, so someone needs to do it. And yeah, she's so popular and she's so amazing. So yeah, it just made me so happy reading it. I pre-ordered as soon as volume 1 was made available to pre-order. I just like put that in the cart, you know.
Awesome. That is amazing. Yeah, definitely need. Okay. We could talk about this all night, or all morning for you. And do you have any other favorite anime that's outside of the magical girl genre?
I really, when it comes to Japanese series, I guess my other really big love right now is Love Live. It's a school idol meta series, about 10 years old now. The fourth season, no, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 6. The 6th season is currently airing. And it's just like, I mean, it's kind of similar in a way to Magical Girls in that they wear cute costumes. There's no actual magic, but they're, doing their best. They're fighting to like do their best in singing and performing and, pleasing the crowd, I guess, and all that stuff. So like that series does generally make me happy. I guess that series really filled the hole in my heart that Glee left behind when I decided to stop watching Glee. So it's like the same vibe for me.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I grew up in the theater. Like I did theater for 10 years. So, it's like not singing well because I was like a kid, but, doing musicals and all that stuff. Like I love that the theater, I love the stage and stuff. Like I just, and so I love the idea of like singing and dancing on stage, something I could not do because I was not good enough. But I really appreciated that, like I appreciate that kind of story, I guess. So I really love that series. And they're starting to get more representation in that series as well, same as Precure. So that makes me happy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I just looked it up. It looks really cool. And yeah, I'm totally with this. This looks fun.
And that's, I think the other thing, maybe the reason why I love it so much, it's like it is a series for an older male audience, but there are no male characters, and there have never been male characters in the whole series. It's like one of the movies, 2 dads kind of show up, but you don't even see their face.
Wow, they were like, men do not exist in this show.
Exactly. It's amazing. I love it. Also, in recent seasons, they're starting to do a little bit more of this, unfortunately, but at least from the beginning, they weren't really sexualizing the characters as much in the animated series. So, like, that was something I really appreciated because that's usually why I don't watch stuff for an older audience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's also can be a turn off for a show for me, too. But yeah. What show would you suggest for someone who hasn't watched a Magical Girl show by somehow and wants to get into the genre?
Well, there are many different kinds of magical girls. Of course, we've been talking mostly about the, battle heroine type of series that, especially the team-based one that, like, Sailor Moon really sparked off. But earlier magical girls, like, I guess it depends on what you like, because earlier magical girls, like, the origins of magical girls is, like, Bewitched and Mary Poppins, I Dream of Jeannie. So they're, like, those are all women, of course, but the idea of like the kind of troublemaker woman who can use magic and like causes shenanigans and stuff, like that's definitely more of the air of the vibe of earlier magical girls, except that they're like in elementary school and it's only one magic user. They have a bunch of friends, and the main character, Sally the Witch, starts with this girl up in the magical world saying, I don't want to do my magic homework. Let's see what's going on with humans. And it's like this huge series.
Love it. Yeah, you're right. I think, it definitely, I think would depend on what genres they like, and that'll kind of like, because Madoka's, I'm sure, is much different from like a Precure from my guess, and like those are different from Sally the Witch, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe if you've truly never seen any magical girls, I would recommend watching DoReMi, like Ojamajo DoReMi, or Magical DoReMi as it was called in English. Because that has a really great balance of both the classic idea of like the slice of life aspect, where most episodes, rather than there being like a monster to fight, there's a conflict, like a regular social conflict that you deal with in the school, usually between classmates or something, and sometimes between each other. But they're also really cute transformations, and they're using goofy magic. So, like, if you watch that and you think, wow, I want to see more stuff with, like, because there are sometimes kind of evil people to deal with, I want to see more of that kind of fighting, then you can go more into Battle Heroine. But if you just want the slice of life stuff, then you can go more back into earlier Magical Girls to get that.
Thank you. I think that makes sense. And then, just like Sailor Moon had her, Sailor Moon says, phrase at the end of every episode, when you came to the US, I guess this is what you would have seen. This was the dubbed version. But yeah, what would your phrase be? So Sailor Ayu says.
We haven't talked about my webcomic
yet. Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. There's so many things to talk about.
I know it's been a long chat, but I don't mind.
Yeah,
if you want to talk about it. No,
definitely. I definitely want to talk about it. I was so excited about it, and I just got caught up in podcasts, and then we were talking about Magical Girls and all these things. But So tell me about your Magical Girls webcomic.
So I have a billion ideas for webcomics, but I specifically wrote this one, which is called Summertime Henshin, to be a short series. Ideally, I think when I first came up with the idea, I wanted it to be something that would take place over the course of a summer and therefore be released over the course of the summer. But that's not feasible. So right now, I have several chapters storyboarded and even more outlined, but it's basically, right now it's kind of slowed down just because I have to pay my bills, but Summertime Henshin is a combination of magical girls and science fiction. So on the science fiction side, the influence is definitely Alien Resurrection and also Douglas Adams' work. I guess kind of maybe not as serious, kind of campy sci-fi, but the basic idea of it is just the idea of magical girls who were made to be magical girls, so literally born to become magical girls, and were scientifically engineered. So it features, the main characters are Seida and Saki, who are sisters, and they live in New York City, and but they are Japanese, and they live with a guardian there, and their parents are back in Tokyo. But as they're there, they discover one summer, it turns out that some aliens are showing up, and that's when they find out that they were actually made to fight these aliens, but they were kind of backup creations, and the true perfect one was the true perfect magical girl was already made but was kidnapped, so they have to find her somewhere in New York. And meanwhile, there is also a fourth girl in the group who was the mistake, and she's also there to cause her own trouble. She decides to show up in New York also, and it just I guess it's a kind of mostly a story about, it is about fighting aliens, but it's also about discovering yourself, discovering more about who you want to love and what love is, I guess, and also a story about, I guess, connection to culture and what that means, because the two girls much like me and my own brother, have very different connections to Japan because of their ages when they first moved to New York City. So like the older sister, she is still fluent in Japanese. She has no trouble like consuming Japanese media or talking Japanese with her cousin, but the younger sister doesn't know any Japanese and is in fact getting ready to start studying for the first time, and she's having a lot of feelings about that as well.
This sounds so interesting. I also, for people who may not know, Douglas Adams wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I'm just thinking like a Magical Girl series with like that kind of inspiration on it just sounds super exciting. I really hope like Rent is always just like annoying, getting in the way of all of our dreams, but I hope you can get back to it soon because it sounds really good. It sounds really, really good. And I like what you sent me before. I don't know if this is the story still, because so like aliens kidnap her boyfriend as well. That just sounds like funny.
Yeah. It starts off, that's when the aliens first show up, they kidnap they kidnap Sada's boyfriend, and it's so she has to go, that like she's not interested in becoming a magical girl. Like summer vacation just started, but her sister insists, because it's her sister's dream, like the younger sister Saki is obsessed with magical girls, and so they have to, like, it becomes a thing where it's like, oh, it's not our choice, your boyfriend's gonna die, so you have to go.
I think
and there are like good aliens as well and stuff, like their allies, and
I love that. Yeah, I love that too. Just like because I mean, everyone, even if you have powers, especially if you weren't like, you didn't get to choose it, like it's not necessarily like I'm gonna be a superhero. It's like, no, I don't really want to, but I like that the idea of like something like forcing them to be like, all right, now I have to like go save this person, like I have to use my powers and figuring that out. And I think that's a really good start, and I'm really excited. I hope you can get back to it soon. And thank you for bringing it up, because my brain is not the best.
That's okay. Yeah, I know it's like we've been chatting a while, so I really, really like this story. I mean, most of my stories I came up with in high school, but this story in particular, I first designed it about a decade ago, so I have just been wanting to like to create it for a while, and like I just like deeply love my characters, so most of my other story ideas are very long, so this one is meant to be maybe 10 or 12 chapters at most.
Nice. And do you have you working on scripts, or like where in the process are you on this? I'm trying to figure out like when can I read it?
So the plan is once I finish chapter 2 is when I'm going to start releasing chapter 1 is the plan. But I want the current plan is to have it both available as a PDF to buy right away, and then also release it for free on Webtoon in parts. And I'm going to I hopefully at least by the end of the year, I like, every day I try to work at least a little bit on it, like at least in writing, if not doing storyboarding, and then sketching out the panels again, stuff like that, because my storyboards are very, very goofy. But I kind of have a process of like writing the outline for the chapter, then storyboarding it, and then writing the specific text, and then working on the sketch after that to like kind of really see how much I could actually fit into the page. So it's like, so the first chapter is completely sketched out, the second chapter is storyboarded, and up to 10 chapters have been outlined.
Nice. That makes all the sense. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. All right. So I will, I'm going to look out for it by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. Yeah. And I'll definitely amplify, share it on our page for anyone listening. Definitely check. I use Instagram, Twitter, and social accounts, and check ours, and we'll definitely support. And I'm gonna read it, obviously, because I'm already excited.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, just like Sailor Moon. This year. Did you think of a Sailor Moon says phrase in this time?
Yes. So my sailor Ayu says is, you should always do your best, but it's always okay to ask for help when you need it.
Yes, definitely. I wholeheartedly agree. We are not meant to do all the things alone all the time. So yeah, I love it. Definitely. And then what's next for you, and where can people find you?
So next for me, I mean, I am still every week releasing episodes of Sparkleside Chats. And despite rent things, that's never going to stop. Luckily, I'm really, really happy about that. And then, the comic Summertime Henshin, hopefully by the end of the year. I'm trying to aim for, November, but we'll see. I'm working on some writing. I'm talking to translators, so hopefully some projects will pan out in those directions. I'm also, always doing art. I paint digitally, so I release a new painting every week. And right now it's October, so I'm doing Magical Girl Witchtober, which is just witch or like wizardly magical girls, and some magical boys. So that is my art prompt thing. Just like very, very silly cartoony sketches, like not very serious drawings of the characters, but it's just something to like get stuff out there. So it's been fun.
And I saw you have a print of Rina Sawayama, and she's also a Sailor Moon fan, and the print looks awesome. So
thank you. I actually have 2 prints of Rina. So
all right, well,
you can get both if you
I
want.
will link to both in the description below for anyone interested. They look really cool.
Thank you.
She's also a Sailor Moon fan, and I'm really excited. Is this Lil Nas X? I'm on your website now.
Yes, I do have a Lil Nas X painting.
Awesome. This is awesome. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, so my personal Twitter is at Ayu Shinos, AYUSHEKNOWS, and the podcast is at Magical Girl Ayu, spelled AYU. And that's on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect. And I'll definitely link to both of those down below, or tag my very great editor will drop them down for me. And thanks again for coming on the show. This was awesome. I love hearing about your webcomic, about Sparkleside. I'm looking forward to joining you on your podcast. Talk about Asuka, and it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Very exciting.
Once again, I am Victoria L. Johnson, host of the Sailor Moon Fan Club podcast. And you can find me at Miss Old School. It's Old School with a K on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the podcast at Moonies Club on Twitter and Moonies_Club on Instagram. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier. I didn't know the term Moonies until I was in my 20s either. So we are this one and the same on that. And then of course we have merch also at mooniesclub.com. And I'm also on TikTok at Sailor Victoria. And of course, you can find this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you can, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Would really appreciate it. And that's it. Thanks for listening. And thank you, Ayu, for coming on the show. Thanks for listening.